Hello friends, and I hope you all are doing good. So this is the story of, what if Naruto becomes her obsession? Weird New World Sakura, you and your team will investigate a certain tree called, the God Tree, or, Inuyasha's Tree. A man has asked us to find a well near the previously mentioned tree. Investigate about the ancient jewel that he wanted to find. You three will find anything valuable in return. He said there is dangers with the jewel and to be aware of your surroundings. I will warn you again of this mission. We do not know much what you're getting into, so be alert. The Hokage looked from Sakura, her prized pupil, to the Hyuga heiress, to the village idiot, all for dramatic effect. You leave tonight. Take as long as needed, but be careful. Sakura looked at Naruto, then Hinata beside her, then back to her Shisho. She nodded, then bowed. Yes, Lady Tsunade. Sakura said, then walked out, dismissing herself. Naruto was oddly quiet, and so was Hinata, though she always was, as they also left. The three shinobi were now in their upper teens. Sakura being the oldest at 18 and Naruto and Hinata at 17 followed close behind. Hinata and Naruto had surprisingly started to date a little over a year ago. Sakura remained single even though she was one of the most popular kunoichi in the village hidden in the leaves. Sakura and Naruto were in Anbu. Hinata was Jonin. Although Sakura was second in command behind Neji, she is also top medic nin. Hinata is a herbalist. She made a lot of the medications Sakura uses as a doctor. Naruto is Naruto. Being in Anbu had changed him little, but being with Hinata changed him much more. He had gotten taller than both the girls. Now he stood 6 foot. His blonde unruly hair was longer now, almost to his shoulders, that is if he didn't wear his headband to hold his hair up in the spikes he so favored. Hinata's long dark blue hair was to her waist, and as usual she was beautiful without trying, and of course still shy. Sakura had grown into quite the breathtaker too. Her pink locks reached to her waist also, though she was tempting to cut them. She also grew in other aspects too, mostly the hips and chest area. Which was a good thing according to Tsunade. She had also stopped wearing so much red and pink and started for black. She still wore red in her skirt, but mostly black was the norm now. Of course when on missions she wore the Anbu gear, as she and Naruto did now. Her mask was a tiger and Naruto's was of a monkey. Both received the Anbu tattoos on their shoulder. Naruto stuck to his orange and black in clothing and Hinata to her tan and blue. The colors fit them anyway. Sakura, being team captain, told Naruto and Hinata to meet her at the gates in an hour and be ready. They both agreed. Naruto was very quiet. It worried Sakura slightly, but she already knew what was wrong. He hated leaving the village in case Sasuke came back, and she understood that, but she had gotten over her crush on Sasuke and had no faith he would ever return. He had broke her heart, trampled on it, then left, had not returned, and tried to kill her, so she just gave up waiting for him. She still wanted him back, traitor that he was, but she would not wait like Naruto was. If Sasuke Uchiha came back, hell would freeze over. Sakura waited for Naruto and Hinata at the gates an hour later. Sakura knew Naruto would be late as always, but Hinata she knew was never late. A shock greeted her as she came to the gate and both were there waiting for her. She just shrugged it off and off they went to a distant land to the north to find this Inuyasha tree. This well and hopefully the jewel. Sakura-san, there's a well up ahead. I think it is the one we're looking for. There is a huge tree that looks to be very old near it also. Hinata said, switching her Byakugan off and looking to her captain, who nodded her thanks and then went to the northwest a few yards and jumped to the clearing, finding exactly what they had been looking for. They had been searching for over 2 weeks now. This place was not easy to find when no one had a clue about it. Sakura went to the well. Hinata and Naruto went to the tree. After an hour Sakura sighed and looked to Hinata and Naruto behind her at the huge tree. Find a jewel? She asked hopefully. Neither had. She sighed. She should have known it wouldn't be as easy. I'm going into the well to see if there's anything at the bottom. It looks like there's no water in it and it seems wide enough for me to jump down. Sakura said. Naruto frowned. Be careful, Sakura-chan, we don't know if it's a trap or not, he said. She smiled a bit and nodded. Hinata nodded, agreeing with Naruto. Sakura jumped in. She didn't hit the bottom. She just kept falling and falling. She gasped and tried to grab the side of the well, finding it wasn't the well walls any longer. She was surrounded in blue light. She tried to grab onto something, anything, but she couldn't. She started to panic, but after moments she ended up passing out. which Sakura Haruno did not just do willingly. Naruto and Hinata's eyes went wide as Sakura's chakra signature was gone in a blink. They turned around and ran to the well, finding it empty. They gasped together in shock. They looked at each other. Where did she go? Should we jump in? It may be a trap. Naruto asked, worried. Hinata frowned. We have to go after her, and this is where she went. Naruto-kun, it may be a trap. But... Hinata's voice faded as Naruto jumped in. She hurriedly jumped in after him, grabbing a hold of his shirt. Blue light surrounded them and they kept falling. Hinata screamed and Naruto yelled in panic, then they both blacked out. Naruto and Hinata awoke to a loud thud and voices around them. Baka. They don't seem to be from here, don't try to kill them. Hinata and Naruto jerked up, armed and ready to defend themselves. They found themselves looking at a few children in rags and covered in grass and dirt. The children gasped in panic at the two ninja and ran. Hinata and Naruto were on alert. What just happened? Where are we? Naruto yelled out. Hinata activated her Byakugan. There is a village a bit away, we should go and see where we are. Maybe we can find a clue to as what happened. Hinata said. Naruto nodded and took her hand and they started toward the village just ahead. Sasuke growled out at his older brother. Finally they were about to fight. Itachi started at his younger brother a yard or two in front of him. He knew this was the end of one of them and he wasn't about to let it be him, and the battle began. I'm horrid at action scenes, so use your imagination, eh? The result had Sasuke and Itachi both wounded and tired, not that either would show it. Sasuke was getting his Chidori ready and Itachi was doing the same, surprising Sasuke of course, as shouldn't have. He had his Sharingan on and could just copy his hand signs, yet when the Chidori was formed they ran at each other and their Chidori connected and a blinding light came, and then Sasuke and Itachi saw nothing. Sakura awoke in a forest on her back. She was staring up hazily at the darkened sky and trees littering the sky overhead. She blinked and her vision cleared a bit so that she could sit up without her vision blackening. She sat up and looked around. She was dizzy, that was a given, but she figured she was out for a while since wherever she was it was night. Or it could be an illusion. She put her hands together yelling, Kai, to dispel the genjutsu. Should that be it? Nothing. Well, it wasn't genjutsu, so what was it? Where was she? She stood brushing herself off. It defiantly wasn't home and she knew she had never been into this forest. The trees were a bit different and the air was cleaner. She frowned. She also sensed no chakra at all anywhere, which meant she wasn't around any ninja villages or she wasn't even near any humans at all. Oh, how right you were, Sakura. She sighed. Well, for starters she had to find that well she had jumped into and threw it into another world. Or perhaps she was just crazy and hit her head. She wasn't sure what to believe at the moment, so just figured both would do. She started to jump to the tree from her position on the forest floor when something gave her a cold chill right down her spine. She turned around to see red eyes attached to the most horrific thing she had ever seen. It was like no animal nor human she had ever seen, it being a combination of a giant snake and bird since it had wings. It had red eyes and it was talking to her. Was it Orochimaru? She hoped to God it wasn't, yet hoped it was at the same time. At least being Orochimaru she could relax knowing it was simply an annoying ninja. But if it wasn't, there was a problem, a big problem. If it wasn't the ninja, she was in a different world completely. She gasped as the snake lunged at her, calling her a Hanyu. Whatever that meant, its Japanese was weird. She never heard that world before where she came from. Thus she had to therefore be in a different world. That blasted well must have some sort of magical power. She didn't understand how, but she wasn't about to question it as she was in the moment very busy jumping out of the way of the giant flying snake. Sasuke awoke. Startled, he jumped up, looking around, wincing as he flexed his wrist, then grit his teeth and hissed. He looked at the dark bruise around his wrist. It had to be broken. He looked around, surprised to find he was not where he had been earlier. He managed to think that his Chidori and his brothers when combined knocked him somewhere else, but he wasn't sure where exactly. Where was Itachi? He had to kill him, yet with a broken wrist it was sort of impossible, but he wanted to know if Itachi survived. He hoped not, but he knew he probably had. He stood and started to head in the direction he figured would lead him to somewhat of a village. Eventually, and he was right, he found a village not far from where he awoke. It was very small and there were no buildings. It must be a poor village, yet they lived in huts. He was confused, they must be really poor in this village. He had never seen such weird clothing before. They started at him like he was a freak, at least he was clean. He stopped an older woman who just gave him a confused stare as if she didn't understand his Japanese, so he started talking in English yet no response. Then she spoke. It took him a good minute to register out what she said. Ye speech odd. Ye not from round here. He nodded to her, she smiled. Where is here? He asked. She paused trying to figure out his words then smiled. Our village is here. Ye be a human. Ye dress like a young Miko who came a weeks past, she helped with a demon. A Hanyu with her a slayer and a monk, 2 other little demon as well. Ye be hunting for them. They be heading to a village a day's travel on foot to the village near the Inuyasha forest. Be many demons. Ye should be armed. Ye be killed, she said. He blinked at her trying to understand that. He nodded not really understanding her at all. He did know she said something about a nearby village with some Miko. Dressed as strangely as him. So maybe it was someone who could explain things, like where and maybe when he was. He felt like the Japanese here was old. Like really old. A brief thought of him being knocked into the past occurred in his mind but he waved it off. There was no way he could be thrown into the past from 2 Chidori connecting. Could he? Naruto and Hinata sigh. They reached the village, but everyone looked old-fashioned. Neither him nor Hinata knew the type of clothing or buildings they lived in. If you asked him, it seemed like they were years in the past, but that was impossible, wasn't it? He wasn't sure but he had to find Sakura. She had to be in this crazy land. The people of the village told him there was a Miko, whatever that was, in a nearby village and she dressed as oddly as them. The Japanese sounded old, so he had trouble understanding it, but Hinata thankfully knew more than he did about what the old man was talking about. What the heck was a Miko anyway? Hinata, do you think this Miko can help us find out where we are and where Sakura-chan is? Hinata looked at Naruto and nodded. I'm sure she can, but I'm not sure we're even in our world. I think we're in the past, maybe the well sent us to the past. The way that man spoke and those kids. I haven't heard that sort of Japanese ever. It wasn't really a different dialect as much as just older than our Japanese, meaning we must be in the past. I have no clue how Naruto-kun, but it must be like that. Maybe Miko can help us. Hinata suggested. Naruto nodded and they went in search of the village which this mysterious Miko lived, whatever the heck that was. Itachi growled out in annoyance. He had no clue where he was. It was a forest, but it wasn't where he was hours ago and it wasn't anywhere he had ever been. He wondered slightly if he was knocked into another world since his little brother's jutsu and his combined, but he doubted it. Yet as he wandered through the forest more and more it seemed to be true. Though now he had to find a way to get back to his own world. And fast. There was nothing with chakra that he had come across, nothing at all, and it panicked him a bit. His wrist was broken which was also aching a lot. This day just got worse it seemed. Itachi suddenly felt a chakra signature. He sighed in relief when he realized whose chakra it was, but was also confused. If he was in a different world. Why was the medic here also? Maybe she knew where they were. At least she could heal his wrist. He approached finding she was fighting something otherworldly. A huge flying snake. And though Orochimaru was horrid looking in his snake form, he was wrong. This thing was much worse. Sakura used a jutsu she learned from Kakashi who took it from Sasuke, his phoenix flower jutsu. The snake burst into flames squawking and screaming in strange wails, hissing and screaming all together. It eventually died and she felt Itachi's chakra shocked and slightly relived. Not because it was him but because it was another ninja, at all. He jumped into the clearing staring at her then the snake. He raised an eyebrow as if asking what the heck it was. She shrugged with hands in the air and all. Itachi Uchiha. What brings you to wherever we are? She asked politely. She saw him tense, she just sighed. You have no clue where we are either, huh? She said. He shook his head a bit. She sighed again and noticed a slight wince from him that he almost got away with. What's wrong? She asked. He looked at her as if asking why. She flushed a bit looking at the very interesting ground. Who knew dirt was so entertaining? Not. Well. It's not like we're allies, we're enemies I know, but you're the first human and ninja I've found. I'm lost and confused. I have no clue what that thing was. I was hoping it was Orochimaru. He snorted, it sounded like he almost laughed. Orochimaru does not have wings, but you were not far off from being right about the form of the creature. He hesitated trying to find something to call that thing. Itachi, how about we make a deal? We both have no clue how we got here. I have an idea, but we have no clue where we are, and it's not like we can really kill each other when we need each other. Plus you can't really do any jutsu with a broken wrist, she said. He narrowed his eyes at her. I could tell, she said, answering his silent glare with a casual shrug. How did you stumble into this strange world? Itachi asked. She shrugged. I was sent on a mission to find a well and jumped in. I was separated from my team. I'm not even sure they're in this world. But that snake talked and its Japanese was weird. It sounded older. What about you? She asked. She couldn't see the harm in telling Itachi her mission now that she was lost and in a seemingly different world. He frowned and looked at his bruised wrist. I was battling my little brother. He used his Chidori and I copied his jutsu. The Chidori met. When I awoke I was here, Itachi said. She nodded, taking it all in. Sent into a different world by combing your Chidori and Sasuke's. Wow. It's almost as strange as jumping in a well and coming here, she said, smiling. He smirked at that. Well, let me see your wrist, she said, holding out a hand for his wrist. He gave her a look that comment deserved, but agreed. It looked like he was going with the kunoichi for a while. It's broken, of course, but I can mend your bones. It will hurt, she said without sympathy. He nodded, and she was right, it really did hurt. He clenched his teeth together in a grunt of pain. All done, she said with a smile. There you go, Itachi. Now which way do you think we should go? She asked, letting him figure that out. He seemed to be a better tracker, and if they got more lost she could blame him. He rotated his wrist. It was sore, but he could move it. That was better than not at all. He sighed for the nth time today and looked at her, then turned his eyes to the sky. It was different in this world, but it should still be the same. West, he said, watching the way the wind blew through the trees. Why west? She asked. He looked at her. Because cherry blossom, that is the way the wind is blowing. We will go that way, he said. She sweat dropped. Well, it was Itachi after all, which meant he made no sense to her but was most likely right. He walked west and she followed. He was impossible sometimes. He reminded her of Sasuke at times, but sometimes she just didn't get him at all. She'd known Itachi Uchiha for quite some time. Not only did she encounter him on quite a few missions in the past few years, but she also was saved by him once. She had been wounded, poisoned really, and woke in a cave with Kisame and Itachi. Kisame being asleep and Itachi watching her. He had told her what he had did and she wearily thanked him. He said not to because he may need her medic skills sometime in the future as payback. She figured this was that payback. She didn't trust him as far as Naruto could throw him, since she could throw him pretty far with her insane strength, but she knew he would do anything possible to get back home to their world, even if that included teaming up with her for the time being. It wasn't like she was telling him Konoha's secrets or anything. So she should be fine. If any other ninja was in her place they would have done the same. Well, maybe not Sasuke, but who cared about him? Hinata and Naruto stood in front of a slightly larger hut than the others in the village. Naruto tapped on the hut. An older woman in a strange white and red robe came out. An eye patch over her one eye. She was old. Ye be looking for Kagome? She asked. Naruto and Hinata paused and shared a glance. We were sent here looking for a Miko. A man said that this Miko could tell us where we were and maybe how to get back. Naruto said, staring at the old woman. Her eye went a bit wide in surprise, then she nodded. Inuyasha and Kagome will be back in a few moments. Kagome is the Miko ye be looking for. Ye are not from this time as Kagome is not from this time, she said. Naruto and Hinata looked at each other again before giving her a curious look. Kagome is from the future. Hundreds of years before this time. Ye might be from the same time. How did ye come to be here? She asked. At least they understood this older woman better. A well. Tsunade Ba-chan told us to find the god tree, and a well and then a jewel. Our captain and teammate Sakura-chan jumped in and we jumped in after her and woke here. Are you saying we're in the past? Naruto asked, shocked. The woman frowned. Ye must be from Kagome's time. Ye be in the past. Kagome may explain more to ye when she returns. Until then ye may remain here, she said. Hinata smiled at the woman. Naruto frowned. Ye said ye, Captain? Is she not with ye? Where is she? The woman asked. Naruto frowned harder, sitting on the floor as they entered the hut. There was a fire in the middle of the hut and mats to sit on. So he sat on one with his girlfriend next to him and the older woman across the fire from them. We were separated, I guess you could say. Hinata said, her hand linking with Naruto's. He was not a happy camper. Ah, the woman said, as if that explained everything. Sasuke was lead to this hut and he sensed chakra inside. He hid his own chakra, curiously listening in on the old woman's words. The future? We were sent into the past. Why is Naruto here then? How did he get here with the Hyuga as well? Sasuke thought. Sasuke had no choice. If he wanted to get back to the future, he had to show himself and maybe team up with the Dobi. He let his presence known, watching Naruto and Hinata tense and stand. Teme, Naruto said, shocked as Sasuke walked in. Dobi, Sasuke said. Hinata frowned. How did you get here? Naruto asked, shocked, his mouth agape. Itachi and I were fighting and our Chidori's combined sending us or me here. I'm not sure if Itachi is as well. I'm not sure where Itachi is, Sasuke said. You? What are you doing here? Sasuke asked. Naruto frowned, which he was doing a lot today, tonight. We're on a mission. Our captain jumped down this well. We were sent to investigate and we went after her. We were separated. Wait, are you telling me Itachi is here? He yelled, pointing at Sasuke, who sent him a glare. Maybe Dobi, I don't know, I would think since I am. Sasuke said. Naruto growled angrily, which in Sasuke's opinion was without cause. Teme, Naruto yelled, pointing at Sasuke, who simply looked back at him. Dobi. Teme, Dobi. Teme. Hinata hit Naruto over the head much like Sakura does. Naruto winced and looked at his girlfriend. Sorry, Hina-chan, Naruto said, rubbing his bump. Ye remind me of Kagome and Inuyasha, the old woman said, shaking her head with a slight smile. Sasuke and Naruto looked at her strangely. Hey, old hag. We're back, another voice yelled from outside at that very moment. Ah, there they be now, the woman said, standing on cue. Itachi and Sakura continued west. Nothing much change, just trees and the occasional animal. They approached a river though, and Sakura made sure it was safe to drink. They both drank cautiously anyway. The water was the cleanest Sakura had ever tasted and it amazed her. How does your wrist feel now, Itachi? She asked, standing from her crouched position leaning over the water. He glanced over at her, then looked at his wrist. It was a bit discolored but not as bad as it was, and the swelling had gone down. He could move it and all. He nodded, deeming it usable. It is fine, he said, and she nodded. He straightened. We'll have to cross this small river, then we continue west, Itachi said. She nodded, unsure they should be using their chakra in this land. There didn't seem to be any ninja in this place, so wouldn't it confuse someone who had never seen chakra or ninjas if they suddenly saw two people walking on water? Yes, but Itachi must not have cared, cause he walked onward anyway. Sakura sighed and followed. Sit. Inuyasha plummeted to the ground. OWW. Wench, why did you do that? Inuyasha yelled, angry for being sat for no reason. You were being rude to Kuga. Kagome yelled, hands on hips. Her uniform gone ever since she graduated and they defeated Naraku. She switched from her school uniform to clothing a bit like Inuyasha and Kikyo. Just not red. Hers was black. She asked for that color since she didn't want Inuyasha to confuse her with Kikyo. Which for some reason a lot of people did. She didn't see the resemblance. I wasn't being rude to that mangy wolf, Inuyasha yelled, standing and pointing at Kuga, who stood unaffected beside Kagome. Sit. Inuyasha again plummeted. Moroku and Sango sighed together, used it. Shippo laughed and the small cat demon slept peacefully, unaware, on Kagome's shoulder. Wench. Inuyasha yelled from his hole. Sit. Shippo continued to laugh while Kuga shook his head. That mutt would never grown up. Kagome. We should leave him here. He'll catch up, Kuga said. She smiled and nodded at him. Sure, that sounds good, she said, and took the hand he offered. Sango and Moroku grinned at that. It was about time Kagome started to like someone other than Inuyasha. We're close to Kaide's village now, Kagome said, pointing ahead to the village in plain view. Inuyasha had caught up just before they reached the hut. Hey, old hag, we're back, Inuyasha yelled, moving the door flap to the side and walking in, seeing strangely dressed people and one with strange colored eyes. Her eyes were a solid silver. She didn't smell like a demon. He was on guard anyway.
Kagome and Kuga came in second. Kagome gasped at the three people. "Who are you?" Inuyasha asked, pointing at Naruto. He stood and pointed back.
"You're a cat," Naruto yelled. Kuga couldn't help it, he snickered. It was just funny. "I'm a dog demon." "Dog," Inuyasha yelled, pointing at Naruto's whiskered cheeks. "And what are you?" he yelled back. "I'm a ninja." "A ninja? Believe it," Naruto yelled. Kagome shook her head. "Sit." Suddenly Inuyasha went down again, confusing the three ninja in the room. Yet no one gave them any explanation.
"Now, how did you guys get here? You're not from this time, I can tell that much, and ninja. You're not from Tokyo, are you? How did you get here?" Kagome asked the three ninja.
"Oh well," Hinata said, speaking up. "A fight sent me here," Sasuke said. Kagome frowned. "Did you fall into the well?" Kagome asked. Naruto and Hinata shook their head. "No, we jumped in after our captain. We're on a mission to find a jewel for this man. He wants to investigate it," Hinata said. Kagome and the group tensed. "Ah," Kagome said, as if that made perfect sense. "The jewel cannot leave this time," Kagome said as she looked at Kaide. "Why?" Naruto asked, curious. "If it does, I won't be able to get back to my time," Kagome said. "Oh well. I guess we can tell them we weren't allowed taking it or something," Naruto said, hands behind his head with a foxy grin. Hinata frowned, but nodded in acceptance. "So can you tell us how to get back to our time?" Sasuke asked. Everyone looked at him. "Well, you can try the well, but I don't know if it will take you to your land or mine," Kagome said, shrugging as if saying, "What can you do?" "We'll have to do it later if you are. It's too late," Kagome said, looking to the sky outside. The door flap Moroku had pulled open to see into the hut from outside with Moroku and Shippo. The three ninja nodded, but tensed suddenly, realization hitting them. "Itachi and Sakura are still here. We can't leave without them." "Well, Sakura, at least we can't," Naruto said the last under his breath. Sasuke tensed. "Sakura is your captain?" Sasuke asked, a bit surprised. Naruto and Hinata gave him a look at that surprise, but nodded. "Yeah, she is second in command of Black Ops. I'm in there as well," Naruto said proudly, SB hung his tattooed shoulder. That surprised Sasuke. Sakura was second in command and Naruto was in as well. He had been gone a long time. "Well, I guess we should introduce ourselves since you might be staying here a while," Moroku said, eyeing Hinata. Naruto saw this and wrapped an arm around her waist, sending the monk a glare. "I'm Kagome. This is Kuga of the Wolf Demon tribe," Kagome said, pointing at Kuga beside her. "Sango and Moroku. Watch Moroku, he's a perverted monk," Kagome said, shaking her head, and looked directly at Hinata. "And Shippo and Karara." Kagome introduced the cat with two tails and the fox-like red-haired boy, smiling. "And that woman is Kaide. She's a Miko and so am I," Kagome said, nodding to Kaide. Naruto gave her a look. "What is that anyway?" he asked about the foreign word. "It's like a priestess with spiritual powers. You see, Inuyasha is a Hanyu, a half-demon. Which is half-demon and half-human, and Kuga and Karara and Shippo are full demons. Kuga's a wolf, Shippo is a fox, and Karara is a cat," Kagome said. Naruto gave her a funny look, then grinned. "Oh, okay," he said, as if that was a normal introduction. Hinata and Sasuke's sweat dropped. "Oh, I'm Naruto Uzumaki, believe it. This is my girlfriend Hinata Hyuga," Naruto said, glaring at the monk Moroku, who rolled his eyes with a pout. "Sasuke Uchiha," Sasuke said, introducing himself quickly, lest the Dobi introduce him as Tem or something weird like that. "We're from the village hidden in the leaves. Konohagakure, Konoha for short. We are ninja," Naruto said, striking a pose much like guys. Hinata and Sasuke nodded. However, weird Naruto just made them look. "Is that why you smell weird?" Shippo asked from behind Sango's leg. Naruto sniffed his arm and made a face. "No, I must have stepped in crap or something," Naruto said, checking his shoes. "Hey Hina-chan, do I smell weird?" Naruto asked, sniffing his shirt again after straightening, then holding his shirt out for Hinata to sniff. She blushed a little. "No, Naruto-kun," Hinata said, lightly sniffing his garment. Naruto grinned and hugged her. She flushed. "Thank you, Hina-chan. See, I don't smell weird," Naruto said pointedly to the cat-eared dog demon. Itachi and Sakura stared up at a huge castle-like building. It was beautiful and all, but the man that stood in front of them made the castle look like crap. He was flat-out breathtaking. Sakura's mouth was agape. Itachi was surprised the tall man was faster than even ninjas, which he wasn't, and Itachi couldn't even follow him with his Sharingan. The man was 6 feet, a bit taller than Itachi and a lot taller than Sakura, she being only 5 feet 5 inches and Itachi 5 feet 7 inches. Which is how tall Itachi really is XD. The man had long silver hair and strange markings on his face. It reminded Sakura of Kiba in a way. The man's markings were violet stripes on his cheeks. Each side there were two, a crescent moon on his forehead, and red like eyeshadow above his eyes. Sakura was just flat out mesmerized. Itachi looked to Sakura from the corner of his crimson eyes. He scowled. It was never good when he was alone, and his only help was dazed by whatever the guy was, who was also dressed weird in that clothing which looked like a robe supped up with armor. And was that a tail? What the heck was going on here? Who are you? Sakura asked. Intelligent question there, Sakura. Sesshomaru, Lord of the West. And what are you? A Hanyu? What are you doing in this Sesshomaru's lands? He asked. Hanyu? No, we're ninja. We were sent here. Itachi was knocked into this land and I jumped into a well and woke in this weird land, but sent here nonetheless. Hey, could you tell us where we are? Sakura asked. Sesshomaru thought about that, looking to both them. Kagome. He said. Sakura gave him a look. No, Sakura, she said with a frown. Didn't he understand Japanese? Not you. A Miko named Kagome. She also came from a well into our time, or so I heard my half-breed brother say. Ninja? He asked, and she sighed. Yes, ninja. Can you help us? Sakura asked. No, he said, tempting to leave them. She frowned, then glared. Why not? Sakura asked with a vein twitching above her eye. I do not meddle with humans. Sesshomaru said. Sakura and Itachi frowned in unison. If you're not human, what are you? Itachi asked, looking at him with the obvious question in his eyes. Sesshomaru looked to Itachi. He had never seen a human with those kind of eyes. Were they really human? I am Lord Sesshomaru, Dog Demon, and Lord of the West. Sesshomaru said, almost puffing out his chest. Demon? Dog Demon? What the heck? Sakura stared at Sesshomaru like he was insane. Demon? A dog demon? Sakura asked, and Sesshomaru turned his golden eyes back to her. Yes, he said. Sakura suddenly appeared in front of him. He was confused. She was human, so how did she move so fast, and she smelled strange to top it off. She poked his fluffy. Is this a tail? She asked. He glared at her, jumping back away from her. It is, he said warily. Itachi looked at a little girl and whatever the heck that green thing was. It looked like a dressed big toad with a stick with 2 heads on it, who were both rushing up to find out what was going on. Creepy little freaky toad thing. What a strange world this was. At least the little girl looked normal in a small orange and yellow checked kimono. Lord Sesshomaru. Oh, who's that? She asked cutely, running up and pointing to Sakura. No one important. Sesshomaru said. Sakura scowled, then smiled at the little girl. I'm Sakura. This is Itachi. We're not from around here. Is this your dad? Sesshomaru choked. And then glared at Sakura. The toad thing scowled at her, squawking, calling her a stupid thing. He didn't know what she was. Obviously, the little girl blushed. No, Lord Sesshomaru saved my life, the girl said almost shyly. Lord Sesshomaru, can they come with us? Please see? She asked. Sesshomaru scowled, but gave in. He wanted to know what they were exactly and how could they move almost as fast as him. Fine. Sesshomaru said, and the girl ran at Sakura, hugging her as Sakura knelt and smiled at her. I'm Rin, she said. Sakura smiled back. Sakura, and that's Itachi, she said again as Rin smiled at Sakura, then smiled at Itachi, who raised an eyebrow at her. Sakura Oni-chan. Will you play with me? She asked. Sakura smiled more and nodded. Sure, Rin-chan. Sakura said. Itachi watched Sesshomaru as he eyed Sakura. He frowned. Why was he staring at her like that? It bothered him that the dog demon was looking at the little medic in such a way. What are they? Sakura sighed as she laid in her new bed. Sesshomaru had given her and Itachi rooms. He said they could stay for a while, but once Rin got sick of them they would have to leave. How very nice of him. Not. Well, she was just glad she had a place to stay and eat even if it was at a rude man's house. Wait, he may be a man, but he is a demon lord. A dog demon. It made her very curious. Was a demon much more different than normal human? Did they have similar things human had in their body? Being a medic, she wanted to know. It was an opportunity to find out things about a different race. She never seen a demon before. Well, she knew about Naruto's demon that was sealed inside him, but it was different, right? She was confused and she wanted to examine this demon more. If she learned more about Sesshomaru, maybe she could find more about what Naruto is. Maybe she could help some people here since she was a doctor, although she wasn't sure her chakra would be any help to these people of this world. They were from a different world, so would it even help them? She wanted to find out for sure. She needed to help if she could. It was her duty as a doctor. She winced. Just as it had been with Itachi, if Sasuke or even her village found out she has been travailing with Itachi Uchiha, an S-class criminal and murderer, then healed him, she would be killed for treason. She sighed and ran a hand over her face. She did help Itachi because he was injured, right? She couldn't say she didn't admire him. He had so much raw ability even if he murdered his whole clan and all. He was an amazing shinobi, criminal or not, and she did find him attractive, which was utterly embarrassing if he ever found out, that is. If anyone did, especially Sasuke, he would go on a rant yelling about how it's stupid and how he would kill her any chance he feels like it. He would probably never speak to her, not like she had seen him at all in how many years. She was 18 after all. He left when she was 13, so 5 years now. She hadn't realized it had been that long. Sakura groaned. When had she started liking Itachi? Was it because he was Sasuke's older brother? Was it because Sasuke at all? Was it her revenge for Sasuke leaving them? Liking his brother who he hates more than life itself. Sakura had always wondered what Sasuke would do after he killed Itachi. His life goal would be fulfilled and then he would have to rebuild his clan. But would he be happy with killing his only remaining family? Wouldn't that be the same as Itachi himself? Killing family members? She sighed again. She needed to sleep, not think so much. Itachi set up traps in his room, making sure that no one sunk into his room as he slept. That would be troublesome. He needed his sleep and he was unsure in this demon lord's home. He looked to his once broken wrist, to his barely bruised arm. He sighed. He was curious why the little medic did it at all. He understood that she was a doctor. Maybe she did it for that reason, but whatever reason, he was grateful to his brother's ex-teammate. Who knew she was such a skilled medic and Anbu? He was curious why his brother would leave such a girl behind, but if he remembered she was a fangirl once upon a time, maybe she still was. But Itachi doubted it. She didn't seem the type any longer. Why would he leave such a girl behind? Itachi wouldn't kill his little brother's family. He just couldn't stand the clan so stuck up, and they used him in so many ways as a kid. He had been a tool, not a child. Itachi walked to his bed. It was black, at least it was a good color, one he was used to. It matched the room, all black. It was very beautiful. A lord's estate, such a wonderful place, and weird. Itachi thought about the medic. He wondered if they would ever get back home, and if they did, if she would consider coming with him to be his medic to heal his eyes. Maybe he could get her to while they were in this weird world. No one would know she did it, after all they were in a different world, and even if they did, she could simply just go with him anyway. He could use her very much and he was sure she would be a fine member of Akatsuki. Leader would love to have her along. Sakura was a medic and very useful after all. He closed his eyes, but wouldn't sleep for a while. He let his body go into a light sleep, but his mind was on alert for anything threatening. Sesshomaru cursed mentally. What were they? He had been in his study for hours trying to figure it out. They said they were not Hanyu, so what in Kami's name were they? It was frustrating him more than he would like to admit. They weren't human. They couldn't be able so fast and have eyes of red. Such strange clothing as well. Ninja, he heard, had strange powers, but none of demons. How very strange, and such strange smells came from them. The woman smelled sweet of cherry blossoms and the man smelled like rose, such a strange scent for a man. He didn't get it. They had a human scent, but an aura around them like the Miko's did. They gave off a strange power, something unlike they had in this world. They had come from a place similar to the Miko Kagome, but was it the same place? If so, Sesshomaru would like to go to that place and see for himself. To learn these ninja ways. They had power, he needed no more, but he would always look for more power if he could attain it. It would be interesting to see how ninja worked, He never actually saw one before now. He never realized they let women as ninja. He slightly wondered if they were really from a new land, considering they may just be spies sent to kill him and try to take over his land. He had to be cautious. The woman, she had pink hair. No human woman had he ever met with pink hair. So he was very curious. What in Kami's name were they? They say human, but are they really? Sakura yawned as she awoke, walking to a sliding door. She wandered into a garden, finding a hot spring in the center. She smiled and undressed to get in. She relaxed at the bath she hadn't had for 2 or more nights now. The hot spring was relaxing and warm. She heard a noise half through her bath and grabbed a kunai from her clothes, looking around the rock she was leaning on and finding. She shouted out in alarm. Sessamaru's pointed ears twitched hearing a scream. He stood. That wasn't any one of his servants or Rin, it must have been the pink-haired woman. He wouldn't let anyone be harmed in his land even if they were spies. He had to make sure they were safe. He would get a bad reputation if a visiting lord or lady were to come and he treated his visitors like they didn't matter. Sometimes he hated being a lord. He found himself in the bathing garden. He sighed. He figured this would happen. A pink-haired woman with long pink hair down her back, sticking to her wet skin, stood shocked, covering herself as the black-haired man with red eyes looked a bit shocked to be caught in the same spring as the woman. He figured they were mates, but as was true, they didn't smell like each other. Perhaps they just knew one another? Sessamaru sighed again. Itachi looked to Sessamaru in surprise, then he walked over to the shocked Sakura and pushed her down into the water. He was thus showing his upper half almost below the waist, enough to be teasing to some women. Lord Sessamaru, forgive us for interrupting you. I scared Sakura. I didn't realize she was here. Which was a lie. He just concealed his chakra. He was already in the spring when she came, but he figured he wouldn't embarrass her by telling her to go away. He was there as she had been striping, so he turned the other way and washed in a hurry so he could leave without being seen. His plan failed sadly. Sessamaru gave Itachi a sliver-raised eyebrow. He of course smelled the human's lie, but still it wasn't his business why he lied exactly. Maybe the man wanted to spy on the pink-haired woman, and Sessamaru understood why. The woman was a very beautiful human, if she wasn't human. Sessamaru sighed, troubled by this turn of events. Sakura had given him wide emerald eyes when she realized he stood behind them on the bank. Had she not sensed him? Interesting, maybe she was a normal human after all, but he still had his doubts. Sakura had thanked Itachi for pushing her back into the water, though she almost fainted as he did. She got a very interesting look at his naked chest. She had a weakness for men wet from the bath. She couldn't help that. She was utterly embarrassed when Itachi said Sessamaru's name. She had flashed him her backside. How unladylike was that? She cursed herself. She shouldn't have stood, but she was shocked. Sakura was currently blushing like mad, having Itachi naked in a hot spring with her. What must that look like to Sessamaru? She wasn't sure why she cared, but still she didn't want him to get the wrong idea or anything. Sakura groaned. I apologize, Itachi frightened me. I agree too that I didn't know he was in this hot spring also. I should have checked. I'm sorry. Sakura sort of apologized to both Itachi and Sessamaru at the same time. Well, it seemed like it anyway. Sessamaru looked down to the girl who was blushing up at him. She looked exotic. It was unusual enough with pink hair. But pink hair with emerald green eyes. Beauty like this was very unusual for a human woman. Sure, demon women were lovely, but he had never seen one with such beauty as this girl. She was unique in a way he wouldn't likely admit to seeing. Itachi noticed Sessamaru's stare and almost glared at the demon lord. Sure, Sakura wasn't his nor ever would be. He didn't like the girl, but still he didn't like how the demon lord looked at her. It was strange. Itachi had a bad feeling about this demon lord and he didn't want Sakura getting tangled in it. She was going to be his medic, hopefully. She would agree and he wouldn't have to kidnap her, but he didn't want her hurt or injured before that time. So he had to protect her, right? Even from men's eyes? Well, Sessamaru wasn't really a man. He was more or less a demon, so he figured yes, he had to protect her from the demon lord as well. Rin is looking for you. Sessamaru finally spoke after staring at Sakura for a few moments. It confused her why he was looking at her like that, but she nodded at him. Hi, I understand. I will find her after I dress. She paused, looking to Itachi. He looked at her, then sighed, understanding her look. He wasn't about to say anything rude to her like his brother would if he had been in the same position. Sasuke would have probably said something in the lines of, "Not like I would like what I saw anyway." How Sasuke could be so moronic he would never know. Itachi would not let his hormones ride him, but the little brother of his didn't know they existed. Itachi didn't know whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. His brother seemed hopeless in that aspect. He didn't know how he would repopulate the clan when he has no hormones. It almost made Itachi chuckle. Sesshomaru took his leave. Seeing it not important to linger any longer, Itachi went back behind his rock on the other side of the bigger-than-expected hot spring, letting Sakura get out and rush to her room naked. Itachi shook his head. Such a weird girl. She was only 5 years younger than himself. No, he would not think that way. He must not. He growled, but seriously, what was he supposed to think when he just shared a bath with a beautiful naked woman? Great, now he was starting to sound like those perverts Jiraiya and Kakashi. Just what he needed. Sakura found a kimono on her bed. It was black with cherry blossoms on the bottom. She almost smiled. It was fitting for her. She put it on after finding a brush in her pack. She would have just put on her extra clothing, but the kimono was placed on her bed for a reason, and plus it wasn't every day she got to wear a kimono. She figured she'd have her fun. She pulled her hair, tying all her long hair back to the nape of her neck. She didn't feel like making it up any more than that. She looked at herself in her own mirror. She brought along sighing. She was still blushing. It was a shocker to see Itachi naked. Well, she didn't see anything below the waist, but it was very close. She had seen chests just as nice as his many times at the hospital, but it was just being so close to him with his black hair trailing down his back wet from the water. She blushed and almost hit herself. She fanned herself, scowling. She couldn't get the image of him from her mind. She was such a pervert. Somehow Itachi's was affecting her like this. She might as well tell Tsunade she had beef with the man. She would get the same punishment for just liking Itachi at all. Sakura walked out of the room into the hall. She followed her nose to a room filled with a long grand table and plates. She saw Rin a few chairs from the head of the table and walked to her, smiling. Sakura sat beside her and Rin grinned at Sakura. Sakura Oni-chan. How did you sleep? Rin had to be 8 or so. Sakura smiled. Very well, Rin-chan, how did you sleep? Sakura asked. Rin grinned a toothy grin, smiling at Sakura. Great, I had a dream that you would become my sister and Itachi Oni-san would be your husband. Isn't that great? Sakura turned red yet still smiled back at Rin. Husband. She felt very dizzy all of a sudden. What's wrong, Sakura? You look pale. Itachi said, walking in from who knows where. Well, at least he was in clothing this time around. He wore his usual clothing. Sakura almost smiled. He wouldn't put on the clothes given to him. She knew he was given something to wear by the scowl he had on his face a few seconds ago when he saw what she wore. Why are you wearing that? He asked, just proving her mental point. Sakura frowned then grinned. What, don't like it? She teased with a wicked smirk. He narrowed his eyes. SSHE sigh. He had no sense of humor. How rude. Because I don't get to wear kimonos often. I thought I would humor myself. Sakura said, sighing as she looked to Itachi, who frowned then looked to the doors opposite the ones they all entered in. Sesshomaru trailed in. Usual armor on. Lord Sesshomaru, good morning. Rin said, smiling brightly. Sakura smiled at her. Rin really looked up to the dog demon lord. Good morning, Rin. Sesshomaru said in reply. Sesshomaru. Sakura said as her greeting. Sesshomaru let a slight smirk lift his pale lips. Sakura. He replied. It startled her. Lord Sesshomaru. Itachi said, drawing Sesshomaru's attention to the red-eyed man. Itachi. Sesshomaru said. Rin said happily. Sakura couldn't help it. She laughed softly. Sesshomaru raised an eyebrow and Itachi shook his head at the little girl's response in the conversation. So Hinata-chan, would you like to take a dip in the hot spring with me and Sango? Kagome asked sweetly. Hinata smiled, blushing, and nodded. She looked to Naruto, who nodded, smiling his okay. Be careful, Hina-chan, Naruto said as she walked out with the 2 other women, leaving Naruto with Sasuke, Kuga, Inuyasha and Moroku. Kaide was out picking herbs with Kikyo, who returned to the village recently. Shippo and Karara was with them, and Shippo. So Inuyasha, are you going to get with Kikyo now that she's in the village? Moroku asked the Hanyu. Inuyasha blushed a bit then scowled. That's none of your business, you perverted monk, Inuyasha said, angry. Sasuke sat in the corner glaring at his hands. Naruto sighed and tried to get a conversation going. Teme. Naruto started. Dobi. What do you want? Sasuke said, looking up to the blonde with his onyx eyes. He wore that gay white uniform with the purple butt bow still. Seriously, who wears that crap? What have you been up to for 5 years? Naruto really had missed his best friend and brother, but he wouldn't say so to him. He was still a bit mad at him for leaving in the first place. Looking for Itachi. And I was about to win too if it didn't send us here. He would be dead by now, Sasuke said, clutching his fists. Do you think I would let that happen, stupid Sasuke? Naruto's sweat dropped. He was sure Sasuke might be able to beat Itachi, but he doubted it. Not that he hadn't any faith in Sasuke, it was just he knew how strong Itachi was. He was in the bingo book as one of the most dangerous men in the 5 shinobi nations, and the fact that he may be alone out there with Sakura made Naruto's blood run cold. He hoped she was okay, but they had to stick with their people since they had no clue how to get back and they were the only ones who could help them. It was silent for a bit after that. Naruto realized Inuyasha and Moroku had left, Kuga included. He was worried something happened, but Sasuke didn't seem to care. Dobi. Sakura. She's your captain? Sasuke sounded confused. It was the first time Naruto heard such a tone from Sasuke. Yeah, she's second in command of Enbu after Neji. She's also Tsunade Ba-chan's apprentice and she is better than Ba-chan even. Sakura-chan is top medic in the 5 shinobi nations. Naruto said proudly. Sasuke sighed, frowning. So she had gotten better. She had rivaled the Hokage's power? That was hard to believe. He wanted to see that for himself. How did you get a Hyuga as a girlfriend, let alone a girlfriend, Dobi? Sasuke asked. Naruto grinned then frowned. Sakura-chan told me that Hina-chan liked me ever since we were young and I liked her and I figured to ask her out. And she said yes, so we started to date. Naruto said, grinning. Sasuke frowned. Even the Dobi was dating now. He missed a lot. Kagome and Sango rested against the banks of the springs opposite each other while Hinata was in the middle relaxing. Wow, Hina-chan, you have a great figure, Kagome said, surprised. Hinata turned red. Yeah, you do. How old are you? Sango asked curiously. Hinata hesitated. 17, Hinata said, blushing more. Kagome was surprised then grinned. I'm 18, well 19 this year, Kagome said, smirking. 20. Sango said, blushing. She was the oldest in the spring. Kagome laughed. So Naruto is your boyfriend. How long have you been dating Hina-chan? Kagome asked. Yes, a little. Over a year, Hinata said, blushing, stammering. Speaking of Sango, you seem to be getting along with Moroku more. Kagome teased the demon slayer, who turned a scarlet and scowled. Who would like that perverted monk? Sango asked in denial. What about you, Kagome? Sango asked in a teasing tone, making Kagome blush. What about me? Kagome said, making Sango smile. What about Kuga? You seem to be getting closer to the Wolf Prince. Are you actually thinking about becoming his mate? Sango asked, watching her sister-like figure turn a scarlet and mess with her black locks. I don't know, she said stubbornly. Sango chuckled. Hinata smiled. Kagome scowled, blushing more. Moroku peeked at the 3 women bathing from a nearby tree. He blushed. Not only was Sango and Kagome beautiful, but Hinata was gorgeous. He wondered how that blonde idiot got such a fine woman. All of a sudden Moroku was snacked out of the tree and into the air by an angry wolf demon. You no-go pervert! Inuyasha yelled, pointing at Moroku. It seems Moroku's plan failed, but it did bring Kuga and Inuyasha closer together. You mud, what are you doing here? Kuga yelled back. You're the pervert! He yelled to Inuyasha, who looked stunned at the wolf's crimson eyes. Kuga calmed down. We can settle this like men. Inuyasha wasn't looking at the girls, he was watching out for trouble, Moroku said. Inuyasha. Moroku said to the still surprised Inuyasha. Never had Kuga showed him his red eyes. Inuyasha was shocked. Kuga was mad because he thought Inuyasha was peeking on his future mate Kagome. He lost control. Amazing. Sorry, Kuga said and walked away, surprising. Maybe Kagome was good for Kuga and vice versa. Kuga was acting more mature and trying not to fight with Inuyasha. He had no need now that Kagome was his. Inuyasha blinked, then grumbled under his breath. It wasn't very fun though, Kuga being all mature now. Inuyasha had no one to argue with. A boulder was suddenly flung at Inuyasha and Moroku. Moroku and Inuyasha paled. Hentai. was heard for a few miles from Sango's lovely voice. A few days later. Okay Kaide, we'll be off now, Kagome said smiling to the older Miko. Kikyo was to stay with Kaide to protect the village. Everyone else was coming along. Shippo didn't have enough sleep, so he was sleeping on top of the large two-tailed cat demon. Sasuke and Naruto and Hinata surprised Inuyasha and Kuga by keeping pace with them. They could keep pace with a Hanyu and full-blooded wolf demon. Well, Kuga wasn't using the jewel shards since the jewel was whole again, but still he was pretty fast. After all day of travel and no Sakura or Itachi, the group settled in a camp for the night. Kagome and Hinata helping with dinner, and since the things from Kagome's time were familiar to Hinata, she helped also. So you're from a different world, Venice, but similar times? Kagome asked Hinata. If their world was like her time. Hinata smiled, unsure, blushing. She was still shy, but she was warming up to Kagome and Sango. They were becoming like sisters to her. I suppose so, Kagome-chan, Hinata said, smiling. After dinner everyone settled in for the night, and even though Sasuke and Naruto and Hinata traveled together with the group, didn't mean they trusted them to watch them as they slept, so Sasuke and Naruto took turns watching with Kuga or Inuyasha or Miroku. Sakura jumped from the sudden loud thunder. Not that she was scared, but it had woken her. She hated thunder. She couldn't hear if someone attacked or not. Great. Now she was insecure. She walked out of her room in her usual clothing. She was sick of kimonos already. Now she preferred her own clothing. She had on all black mostly. She had put her Anbu clothes away for the time being. She wore black shorts under a red skirt. Like in Shippuden, but not tan. She walked down the hall to Itachi's room, knocking. She walked in unsure. She really didn't want to come in here, but he was also a ninja and she trusted Itachi here. At least they were on the same side while stuck in this place. This time. She had a kunai thrown at her and she caught it with ease. Surprised though, she saw a figure drop from the ceiling, relaxing when she saw the Akatsuki cloak. Which is something she had never done before in her life. Sorry for intruding, Itachi. I figured to come here since I couldn't hear if an enemy approached because the thunder, Sakura said. Very well, you will be fine here, you can help me see, Itachi said. She was surprised for a moment, then remembered that Itachi's vision was going bad because of his Mangekyo and Sharingan. Wait. If his vision was going bad, he just threw a kunai at her almost blind. She winced. He just blindly threw a kunai at her. Great. Good thing it was her and not Rin, Jez. Somehow she ended up sitting back to Itachi on the floor. The storm still going strong and somehow she ended up falling asleep. She had a long day playing with Rin. Tomorrow she would ask Sesshomaru if she could help if anyone was sick, being a doctor for them. Sakura awoke surprised. Where the heck was she? She looked around in slight panic. Then she felt breathing at her back and went still. She fell asleep against Itachi. She was so stupid. She could have been killed falling asleep with the enemy at her back. She trusted Itachi to make sure she was safe as she slept. That was saying something to Itachi and to Sakura herself. She blushed, cursing herself. Did you sleep well? Is the little girl tiring you? Sakura winced. Yep, she knew she fell asleep. Yeah, but Rin-chan is a great child. She reminds me of Naruto when he was younger. So hyper, haha. Sakura said, sweat dropping. Itachi simply nodded. The storm is letting up, Itachi said suddenly. She nodded. Right, she needed to get to her room before she was seen coming out of Itachi's room at night. It was bad enough that Sesshomaru probably thought they were lovers since he caught them in the spring together, but if she came out of his room in the wee hours of the morning, that would just prove that they were and they weren't. She wasn't sure why she should care if he thought they were or not. You should get back to your room. Don't push yourself, Itachi said as she stood. He stood also. I'm thinking about asking Sesshomaru if he needs my assistance in the estate for a medic, Sakura said suddenly. Itachi frowned then nodded. Okay, I think that would help you pass the time better, Itachi said. She smiled and nodded. Thank you, Itachi, she said almost silently as she walked out. She wasn't sure why she asked his permission. She was treating him as she did Kakashi or Neji. Itachi tensed. That was a first, being thanked. Sakura grumbled obscenities. She hadn't seen Sesshomaru at all the past few days. She wanted to ask about being the estate doctor while she was here. Just because she might not be able to use her chakra on these people doesn't mean she doesn't know any other normal things. She was a Dr. Chakra or not. Sakura heard a girl's voice behind her and looked down at the smiling Rin. "Hi Sakura Oni-chan. Are you looking for Itachi Oni-san?" Rin asked, and Sakura smiled, but shook her head. "No, actually I'm looking for Sesshomaru. Do you know where he is?" Sakura asked. Rin grinned. "He's patrolling his lands. Lord Sesshomaru should return today, then he will be in his study. I'll show you there after dinner. He should be home by then," Rin said, and Sakura smiled and patted the girl's head. "Thank you, Rin." Sakura said. The girl beamed at her and nodded. "Hey Sakura Oni-chan, do you want to pick flowers with me? I picked them for Lord Sesshomaru. You can give yours to Itachi Oni-san." Sakura blushed, then rubbed the back of her neck. "I'd rather not. But I will pick flowers with you, Rin-chan," Sakura said, smiling warily. Rin grinned and they walked off to the gardens. Itachi was bored. He had to say it had been a while since that happened, so he went outside and threw shuriken at a tree to pass the time. Very entertaining as it was, he soon grew bored of that, so practiced his ninjutsu, then taijutsu. Then genjutsu, which didn't help very much when he had no one to practice with. It was soon time for dinner and he was sweating, so he decided to bathe before he went to said dinner. Overall, Itachi's day was very boring. He wondered if the cherry blossom had a better day. Perhaps she would like to train with him to pass the time. Though he was sure the little girl was giving her a run for her money as it was. Sakura groaned. She had just bathed again before dinner since she was out in the sun most of the day, and now she was dressed in her regular clothing that managed to get washed every day without her knowing. It was strange. She had brought 4 pairs of clothing. This set was a red shirt with black pants. She walked out of her room to the dining room, and as usual Rin was there before her. This time so was Itachi. He was sitting across where she sat beside Rin. Sesshomaru wasn't there. "Itachi, did you have a good day?" Sakura asked. He looked up at her, then nodded. "And you, Cherry Blossom?" he asked. She smirked. He had started going back to her nickname EH. Interesting. "Fine. I played with Rin-chan. We picked flowers. You were training. I saw you earlier," Sakura said, smiling as food was brought out by servants. She wasn't used to them yet, but they didn't bother her. Itachi wondered when she saw him because he didn't sense her, and he would have when he was training, but he didn't. She must be very good at concealing her chakra. "Ah," Itachi replied, then looked at the door opposite the one he entered when Sesshomaru walked in. He wore the same thing as always. Armor and all. They ate in silence, well except Rin, who talked to Sesshomaru the whole time. After dinner Sesshomaru excused himself to his study, and when Rin finished her dinner she took Sakura to his study. Itachi didn't ask, but he was curious. Why she wanted to see him, then figured it was about her being a doctor here. Sakura winced when she was left alone to knock on Sesshomaru's study door. She knocked and heard a "enter" from Sesshomaru. She walked into the lovely gold and red room. Behind a desk sat Sesshomaru, who looked to be doing some sort of paperwork on scrolls. It reminded her of Tsunade's sort of, at least Sesshomaru did his paperwork. "What do you want, woman?" Sesshomaru asked, not even looking up. Sakura narrowed her eyes but didn't say anything. "I'm a doctor. I wondered if I could be of any use to your estate. I would like to help if I could," Sakura said. Sesshomaru did look up at that. He placed his current scroll down. "Rin is the only human here other than you and your friend." Sesshomaru had hesitated on what to call Itachi, and she scowled at him. "Itachi is actually my enemy back in our world. We just agreed not to kill each other since we need to get back home," Sakura said. Sesshomaru raised an eyebrow. "Very well," Sesshomaru said, almost amused. "I could still help," Sakura said about being a doctor for him. He frowned, then chuckled. "Stubborn. The people here are all demons. If they are wounded they die or heal themselves. They don't need doctors," Sesshomaru said. Sakura frowned deeper. "But if you wish to make a fool out of yourself I will tell them you are a doctor, but the only one I would advise you to help if hurt is Rin," Sesshomaru said. She sighed and nodded. "Thank you," she said and sighed. "Is your hair naturally that absurd color?" Sesshomaru asked such a weird question, yet she didn't seem surprised. She must have got that question a lot. "Yes. I was born with pink hair," Sakura said in another sigh, a little annoyed this time. Sesshomaru nodded and she left. He frowned to himself. What kind of human has such a weird scent plus pink hair? Plus one with red eyes? ninja that could move almost as fast if not faster than Inuyasha, his half-breed half-brother. It's been a week already, Inuyasha, and we still haven't found Sakura or Itachi. Are you sure you can't smell them? Kagome asked, and Inuyasha scowled. No, woman. We already have that wolf out looking too. We haven't even found any trace of them. They're probably dead by now. Inuyasha said. Miroku and Sango hit Inuyasha over the head while Kagome sat him, letting him form a Inuyasha-sized hole in the ground. It rained also, so their scent would have been washed away long ago. Miroku said in a sigh, as if it were normal for a half-demon to just slam into the ground by word alone. We can't sense either of their chakra either, Hinata said to Kagome, who frowned. And we can't seem to get anything out of the villagers anywhere. We looked everywhere in the east. All there is the south, north, and... Kagome paused and looked at Inuyasha, who scowled. West. Sasuke said. Inuyasha shot him a dirty glare. Sasuke just glared back. Lord Sesshomaru is Inuyasha's older half-brother. He is the ruler of the western lands. However, Inuyasha and his brother do not get along. You could say they want to kill each other. Miroku explained to Hinata and Naruto. Sounds like Teme and his brother, Naruto said, chuckling. Sasuke gave him his famous glare and turned to glare at the ground. Does Sasuke and his brother not get along also? Miroku asked. Naruto and Hinata exchanged a look, then frowned at Sasuke. No, they don't. Hinata said. Itachi killed his clan. All of them except Sasuke. Naruto said, looking to Sasuke's now tense back. Ah. So Sasuke and Inuyasha are somewhat alike in wanting to kill their older brothers, Miroku said. Naruto and Hinata nodded, unsure if they should, but they nodded. Sesshomaru won't just let us in his lands. We should leave west for last, Inuyasha said, annoyed. Ah. That would be wise, Miroku said, nodding. Sango sighed. How are we supposed to find them like this? Sango asked. How about we split up? Sango asked. Inuyasha and Kagome frowned. I guess that could work. Sango, Miroku and Karara can fly overhead and cover more ground. Sasuke, Naruto, and Hinata-chan can go with Inuyasha. Kuga, Shippo and I will search also, Kagome said. I guess that could work, Hinata said, nodding at Kagome's plan. Itachi has black hair that's tied back at the nape of his neck. He's wearing a black and red cloak that has red clouds on it and red eyes. Sakura has pink hair and green eyes. You can't miss her, Sasuke said, rolling his eyes. Naruto and Hinata's sweat dropped. So Kuga, Kagome and Shippo take the rest of the east. Sango and I will take the north. Inuyasha, Sasuke, Naruto, and Lady Hinata will take the south, and when we finish, if we don't find anything, we will meet up at Kaide's and then go to the west all together, Miroku said. Everyone nodded except Sasuke and Inuyasha, who seemed to be glaring nowhere in particular. Searching Kahona. Tsunade ran a hand through her hair. What was taking them so long? Not even a word sent from them, nothing at all. She was very worried about her pupil and both Naruto and Hinata. Tsunade knew this mission was not a normal one. She knew for a fact that the last ninja that had been assigned this mission had never come back. She was worried, of course, but she had figured that her top Anbu could handle themselves. Perhaps she should send another team to make sure the three were alive and well. It had only been 3 weeks since they had been gone. It should have taken them 2 weeks to get to the tree and well and then find the jewel and come back. 4 weeks, maybe 5 at most, but still. With not even a word from them, it worried her more than them missing for 4 weeks would. What if they were killed? What if they had been captured, injured? What if they were lost? She rummaged through her desk and pulled out a bottle of sake. She poured a glass and drank it in one swallow. She would have to send another team to make sure the tree were all right, but who? Just as she thought the question, there was a knock on her door. Enter, she said with a sigh after her words. Neji Hyuga stepped inside, closing the large wooden doors shut behind him. Lady Tsunade, Neji said, nodding his head to the Hokage. Tsunade frowned at the Anbu member. He was the leader of the Anbu and the only one ahead of Sakura in rank. Neji's silver eyes stared blankly at the Hokage. Report, Tsunade said, remembering that Neji had come to tell her the success or failure of his current mission. The Uchiha was last seen in Stone searching for his brother. My team and I caught up with the one in Akatsuki named Deidara. He unfortunately got away, but he told us that Itachi was also in stone with Kisame. Sasuke had to have ran into his brother. We searched stone and found a place in the forest that looked to be disrupted by the Uchiha's Phoenix Flower Jutsu and the other Uchiha's Chidori. There was no trace of either, but there was blood, Neji said. Tsunade frowned even more. Enough to perhaps have one or both dead. Neji shook his head, spilling chocolate locks over his shoulders. No, Tsunade was puzzled by this. If neither were dead, where did they run off to? Good work. I would have you rest usually after a mission like this, Hyuga, but I'm afraid I am going to have to give you and your team another mission. Neji's brows creased. Sakura, he said. Tsunade nodded. Feudal era, Naruto's group. It's been 4 days since we started looking for them. She's not in the south. Nothing is down here, Sasuke said. Naruto glared over at him. We settle here for the night. We go back tomorrow to the village, Inuyasha said, glancing at Hinata, who was sitting on a tree panting from the searching. Inuyasha had been running at full speed, and yet all 3 ninjas seemed to keep up fine, except the female. She had more trouble, having to stop them more to rest. Inuyasha didn't mind. He was impressed that they had kept up with him for as long as they did. Kagome said they weren't from her time, so where were they from? Another time? Another world altogether? That old hag had said that it was possible that the Bone Eater's well had brought them from another world. It brought Kagome from a different time, so why not bring others from a different world? He didn't like the black-haired human. The female was fine. She seemed much like the other females he encountered while traveling. Moroku had often liked those type of girls. The blonde-haired kid was all right. He was annoying the hell out of him, but he liked him. At least he wasn't as bored with the kid around. The thing that confused him was he smelled a demonic prescience on the kid's skin. Under it was more like it. He wanted to ask, but wasn't sure it would be welcome. It wasn't any of his business, but he was wasting his time searching for 2 humans who he didn't even know. Inuyasha watched as the female smiled at the blonde-haired kid. They were mates. He could tell that much. They carried each other's scents, that was for sure. The female also carried the blonde's young. Perhaps that was the reason he himself didn't mind stopping so often for her. He didn't think either of the other 2 humans knew of it, or perhaps not even she knew of it. Hinata caught Inuyasha looking at her and flushed in embarrassment. She lowered her head so she wouldn't have to meet his eyes. That was another weird thing. The girl's silver eyes, and the raven-haired male's black eyes that changed to a weird red like a demon's. He had heard about ninjas. He had never seen one, but maybe this was how they were like, he wasn't really sure. The 2 male ninjas set up the camp and the female went to get firewood. Inuyasha followed her for her safety alone. He had promised Kagome to protect them. He didn't like it, but since she was with child he figured someone had to. Kuga's group. Kagome huffed. They had found nothing. Nothing at all. Neither had the other 2 groups either, or so Kuga said. The east was clear. They had searched every village and every hole and cave to hide in, but nothing. Not even a trace. Nothing. Kuga had said they would head back to the old Miko in the morning. She had never met the female ninja they were looking for. She has seen ninja before, but they were not common in her time. Never liked these ninjas though. Hinata was really sweet and Naruto reminded her of Inuyasha. She liked them both. She wasn't too sure about the raven-haired male. She had heard that ninja had different skills, but she had never heard of any who could change their eyes to red like a demon. Kuga said that Naruto smelled like a kitsune demon. He didn't look like one in the least. Kuga said the scent was more in him, under the skin, than on it. She had asked if he was possessed. Kuga said he wasn't sure. The blonde didn't seem like it. He was always smiling, and if he wasn't, he was yelling at the raven-haired male. Sasuke. Naruto and Hinata had said that Sasuke's relationship with his brother was like Inuyasha's with Sesshomaru. A little different. Kagome was curious to why anyone would kill their family and why anyone would want to kill said family left. If she only had a brother left, she wouldn't want to hurt him, let alone kill him. Stubborn men was all it was. Shippo was in front of the fire, curled up asleep. It was a little cold tonight. She worried about the girl she had never met. Sakura. A pretty name. With pink hair all the same. She had never seen a human with pink hair, but the girl was a ninja from another world. Maybe it was more common where they were from. Inuyasha and Kuga seemed taken back when they were told her hair was natural. Kagome didn't blame them either. Humans just didn't have pink hair. Well, neither did they have silver pupil-less eyes like Hinata or changing eye colors like Sasuke. The ninjas certainly were different from what they were all used to, even Kagome herself. She hoped this Sakura could handle being by herself. Kagome had been amazed to see the three ninja keeping up with Kuga and Inuyasha. So had both Kuga and Inuyasha. So maybe Sakura would be fine. If she could outrun the demon, then she could survive, though she wasn't sure she could kill it. Hopefully she wouldn't run into anything dangerous at all. And the other male ninja that had supposedly been brought here, Itachi had been his name. She heard from Naruto and Sasuke's conversation. He may have killed his family, but she would never want anyone to be at the mercy of demons. At least bad ones. She's like to be at Kuga's mercy anytime. She blushed and shook her head. Bad thoughts. Kuga chose that moment to walk into the clearing with wood, and a boar over one shoulder. She smiled warmly at him and he flashed a bright grin her way that warmed her face even more. He set the wood by the fire and took out to cleaning the boar. Kagome watched him with keen eyes. He was so beautiful. His long black hair was tied up. His blue eyes so lovely, so serious while doing work. Why did he have to be breathtaking? Kuga noticed her stare and grinned at her with white teeth. He had longer canine teeth in his mouth as well, giving him more wild look, although the way her dressed did that already. With his brown furred clothing, his armor and brown tail. I love that you notice me, Kagome. She flushed in embarrassment. I'm going to clean up in the river, he said after putting the meat onto the fire. She nodded. He ran off into the woods and she sighed. She loved Kuga. She knew that. They weren't together, but they were working on it. If Kuga had his way, he would be her mate already. Kagome didn't want to move that fast though. She wanted to date him. Of course that's what they sort of have been doing up until now. Kuga didn't understand the concept, so she said court, and he nodded, willing to wait a little longer to have the woman of his choice. She wondered if Inuyasha would get with Kikyo now that he didn't have her to worry about. She was with Kuga and so he didn't have to worry about her anymore. He didn't have to sneak off with the long-dead priestess. He didn't have to worry about making her mad or jealous. She wished him luck in getting with Kikyo. She was nice even if she didn't seem like it. Kuga came back into the clearing, but she didn't hear him, so when he wrapped his arms around her waist she gasped in surprise. She smelt his musky wolf scent and relaxed. The kid's sleeping. He whispered huskily in her ear. She flushed again, but smiled as she turned in his arms so his mouth could connect with hers. I love you, he said against her mouth. She sighed. I love you, she breathed against his moist lips. They both jerked their attention to Shippo, who was blushing, but had a giant grin on his face at the same time. Well, maybe I should go back to sleep. He grinned and laid his head back down, closing his eyes with his back turned to them. Kuga blushed and tried to hide it. He got embarrassed with Kagome like this, but his pack mates told him to be confident. He tried to be, he really did, but it was hard. He was finally getting the woman he wanted and the mud wasn't in her heart anymore. He was a little confused when she wanted to date him first, but when she said court he knew the meaning and smiled at her. He would rather just be her mate, but if she wanted to go slower he could do it. He didn't like it, but he could do it. He had to go back to his pack soon. Once they headed back to the old Miko, they had to go to his pack. He couldn't leave them more than 2 weeks at a time. Maybe Kagome would come back with him this time. The pack loved her. She got along great with them all. Plus she was a Miko, they liked her even more because she could heal with her powers. Of course it was spiritual power that hurt most demons. She could heal them nonetheless. Not major wounds of course, but while traveling with her group in the mud they had a lot of wounds and she brought things back from her world that were bandages. All in all they loved his future mate, and so did he. Moroku's group. Sango sighed. No sign of anything. No Sakura or Itachi. She was wary of the raven-haired kid. The blonde didn't look like a demon or act like one for that matter, but he felt like one. Moroku said that he could hold a demon inside. She asked if he was possessed, but Moroku said he wasn't. Plus he seemed like no trouble. They all just wanted to find their lost friends, or in Sasuke's cause lost brother. It was getting dark so they made camp. Karara was tired and rushed off into the woods to get something to eat for herself. They had ate earlier so they were fine. Moroku sat next to her by the fire they set up. Do you think we can return them to their own land? She asked the monk. He sighed and ran a hand over her bottom in thought. Perhaps. It might be difficult. They could be sent to another world or Kagomas. It will be very confusing, but maybe we will be able to. The thing though is, if they will be able to find their comrades. Sango nodded. Do you think they are alive? Moroku shrugged. They are ninja. I have heard of their kind, but they are much different from what I heard. They keep up with Kuga and Inuyasha. It is very interesting. Sango nodded. Let's get some sleep, Sango said. Moroku grinned at her lecherously. Who needs sleep? She blushed, but hit him. He grumbled as she walked to the other side of the camp and slept. Well, he tried. We need to regroup in the village. We haven't found anything and it's been 4 days. I would be surprised if they stumbled this far out anyway. Moroku announced a little later. So we have to go west after all into Sessamaru's lands. Moroku chuckled. Yes. To be continued, and thank you all for watching.